Republicans are pushing the White House to come up with a more coherent defense strategy, one day after members of their party barged into that impeachment inquiry deposition, demanding House Democrats stop holding hearings behind closed doors.
By golly, if they're going to do it in public. Don't hide it from the American people.
Lindsey Graham tonight saying he's spoken to the White House chief of staff, who told him they're working on getting a messaging team together. President Trump's praising the protest, tweeting thank you to House Republicans for being tough, smart, and understanding.
What unfolded in Washington over the past few days doesn't just qualify as a political mess. It's a full-blown seismic event ripping through the Republican Party from the inside out. And if anyone thought the tension inside the GOP was going to cool down anytime soon, forget it. The temperature is rising, not dropping. Let's start with the spark that lit the fuse. A group of Republican lawmakers storming into a closed-door impeachment deposition, practically beating on the walls, demanding it all be made public. These guys came in like it was some renegade protest movement, shouting about transparency and accusing Democrats of hiding the truth. And honestly, the stunt wasn't even the craziest part. It was the reaction it triggered across the entire Republican landscape. Because while that spectacle was unfolding, several top Republicans were quietly and not so quietly pushing the White House to get its act together. They want a coherent defense plan, a messaging strategy, something to stop the bleeding. Lindsey Graham even admitted he spoke with the White House chief of staff, who told him they're scrambling to assemble a communications team to keep the narrative from spiraling completely out of control. Then, of course, Trump jumps in with his usual flamethrower approach, tweeting praise toward the lawmakers who barged into the hearing, calling them tough and smart, and thanking them for standing strong in what he once again labeled the greatest witch hunt in American history. Classic Trump. He never misses a chance to pour gasoline on a fire that benefits him. But here's where the story detonates into something way bigger than another partisan stunt. What we're watching is possibly the most serious internal rupture inside the GOP since Trump first bulldozed his way into the political arena. This isn't just tension, this is a war brewing inside the party, and it's reaching a level that nobody saw coming. Because now, unbelievably, Trump has started pulling back support for some of the very Republicans who built their careers on defending him. He's telling people behind closed doors, and now in not so subtle public signals that he's done, carrying candidates who he believes aren't loyal enough. The man who turned the modern GOP into a mirror of his own brand is now threatening to abandon it because he's fed up with what he calls internal chaos. And the timing? Disastrous. Republicans are heading straight into a crucial election cycle, and instead of a unified front, they're dealing with Trump essentially saying, "Good luck out there. You're on your own." That's like a quarterback stepping out of the championship game because he doesn't like the attitude in the locker room. It's reckless to the point of self-sabotage. But we haven't even gotten to the core battle tearing the party apart, the firestorm surrounding Defense Secretary Pete Hegsith. Republicans are absolutely hammering him over his management of military operations in Latin America. They're calling it reckless, humiliating, destabilizing, you name it. Some lawmakers are so furious they're openly accusing him of bungling operations in ways that make the entire administration look incompetent on the world stage. This isn't polite policy disagreement. This is the kind of criticism that gets blood boiling in the Oval Office. Because, let's be real, attacking Hegsith is basically attacking Trump's judgment. Trump picked him. Trump trusts him. Trump values loyalty above practically everything else. So, the moment Republicans started taking swings at Hegsith, Trump interpreted it as betrayal, not critique. And instead of de-escalating, he escalated. Hard. The Republican civil war that followed has grown so intense that it no longer resembles a party divided, it resembles a party detonating from within. You now have two factions lined up against each other. The loyalists, who will defend Trump no matter what, and the establishment conservatives, who've had enough of governing by chaos and want someone competent running the Pentagon. Now add Ted Cruz to the mix, usually one of Trump's most dependable allies. Cruz took the shocking step of publicly calling out the president's divisiveness. warning that the GOP is heading toward electoral disaster if the party doesn't stop ripping itself apart. When Ted freaking Cruz, the same guy who spent years polishing Trump's armor, says the party's collapsing under Trump's influence, that's not noise, that's a red siren blasting over the entire conservative movement. And things only worsened after Trump fired shots at other Republicans, including criticizing figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose resignation triggered even more anger and resentment across the MAGA wing of the party. It's an endless domino effect. Trump lashes out, Republicans lash back, Trump escalates, factions deepen, unity collapses. Meanwhile, Democrats are standing on the sidelines watching the GOP implode and thinking, please, keep going. Because this internal war is a gift to them. Now let's zoom into the real pressure point, the timeline. Understanding how quickly this spiraled explains everything. In late November, rumbling started inside the party about Hegsith. A few senior Republicans privately questioned whether he was the right person for the job. They were cautious, tiptoeing around the subject. But the dissatisfaction grew louder, spreading like a crack across a windshield. Then December hits, and suddenly everything explodes. Republicans begin speaking out publicly, hammering Hegsith for dangerous mismanagement and reckless mishandling of U.S. forces in Latin America. This wasn't whisper-level criticism anymore. This was open rebellion. And on December 3rd, Trump dropped the political equivalent of a nuclear bomb. Out of nowhere, he announced he was stepping back from supporting Republican candidates in upcoming elections. He blamed disloyalty. He blamed internal sabotage. He basically said, if you won't stand with me, I won't stand with you. That one announcement sent shockwaves through the entire Republican ecosystem. Campaign managers panicked, fundraisers froze, candidates who'd built their whole strategy around Trump's endorsement began scrambling for a plan B. Because like it or not, Trump remains the single biggest turnout engine on the right. Without him, dozens of races become instant coin flips or outright losses. But Trump didn't back down. In fact, he doubled down. He accused Republicans of failing to support his agenda. He defended Hegsith fiercely, and in Trump's worldview, criticizing his Secretary of Defense was indistinguishable from criticizing him personally. That's how he operates. Loyalty above competence, loyalty above strategy, loyalty above everything. Now think about the political mechanics here. A functional administration welcomes policy debate. A competent president values strong voices in his cabinet, not blind devotion. But Trump isn't wired that way. If you question his personnel choices, he sees it as mutiny. That's why this conflict is impossible to resolve quietly. The fight over Hegsith has become a symbolic battleground, a proxy war for who controls the Republican Party going forward. The establishment wants strategic planning, qualified appointments, and control over public messaging. The loyalists want Trump at the center of everything, unchallenged, unquestioned. You cannot reconcile those two visions. That brings us to the broader ideological fracture. Republicans no longer agree on what the party even is anymore. The establishment wants traditional conservatism, fiscal restraint, strong defense, global leadership, stable institutions. The MAGA faction wants populist fire, cultural combat, and absolute fealty to Trump. The Hegsith meltdown exposed the divide so clearly that there's no pretending it's a difference of opinion. The party is fundamentally split on identity, priorities, and strategy. And the consequences will be enormous heading into the 2026 midterms. Because while Democrats are already organizing, raising money, recruiting candidates, and preparing a disciplined national message, the GOP is tearing chunks out of its own flesh on live television. Voters hate chaos. Independent voters run from chaos. And right now, Republicans look like they can't govern their own internal affairs, let alone the country. Foreign governments are watching too, taking notes on every dysfunctional moment. When America's political leadership looks unstable, the entire international order wobbles. Allies lose confidence. Adversaries test limits. And all of that stems from an administration and party more focused on internal loyalty tests than strategic national interest. The worst part? This isn't a disagreement that can be solved by a few private meetings. The divisions are structural. The emotions are personal. The grievances are deep. And Trump has made it clear he's not compromising. He expects the party to bend to him, not the other way around. Which means the GOP now faces two paths. Path one, unite behind Trump completely. This would silence dissent, protect Hegsith, and give Trump uncontested control. But it would alienate moderates, choke off traditional donors, and push independents away. Path two, push back against Trump. This would reclaim institutional control and restore stability. But it risks a full revolt from Trump loyalists who represent a massive chunk of the base. Either way, the cost is enormous. The Republican Party cannot thread this needle without losing something, either its identity, its voters, or its internal cohesion. And the clock is ticking. The next few weeks will determine whether the GOP enters the midterms as a unified force or as a fractured group limping into electoral battle.